I want to show something else, what I'm going to call deep politics. Deep politics. What is it when a birth certificate is not a birth certificate? What is it when a birth certificate is not a birth certificate? All right. So, as you know, Merz, scratcher German final Nazi, was in Washington, D.C. He has taken his pilgrimage, just like Starmer, just like Macron, begging for money, begging for assistance, begging for a backstop, begging for all of these things in order to escalate the war in Ukraine. Again, Europe trying to start a third world war. I'm fascinated by that dynamic. They keep starting world wars. Whether it was Austria-Hungary going after Serbia, which ends up sparking this kind of larger conflict, whether it was Hitler pulling over the German state and turning it into a war machine that effectively conquered all of Europe, because that's what happened. It conquered all of Europe. And if it would have focused on Britain as opposed to turning it on Stalin, it would have taken Britain also. They could have fought with, shovels and spoons all they wanted. They would have been taken over. The British Air Force was about to buckle. And at the point where that thing buckled, Britain was toast. So it was mistakes that was made that disallowed Hitler from accomplishing objective. That and the Soviet Red Army that gave up 20, 30 million people in order to protect the rest of the world, who was perfectly fine with letting Hitler and Stalin destroy their militaries. All right. So Merz is in D.C. begging for money and support. And he does something that I want to point out. He does this. I'm fascinated by this. I love this stuff. So he presents Donald Trump with a birth certificate of his grandfather. I'll play it out.
This is the birth certificate of Donald Trump's grandfather, born in 1869, close to Bad Dürkheim, right? Yeah. That's called and his Christian name was Friedrich. Right? That's serious German. Serious right? German name. Serious German. Bad Dürkheim is serious German. But I want to thank you very much for, first of all, I want to thank you for that. That's my beautiful. Pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you again. Fantastic. We'll put.
All right. Question. Why did he do that? Isn't that fascinating? Why did he do that? Now, some would say, yeah, I mean, it's just a nice gift. He's just being nice. That's all. He's just being nice. He's giving him a gift. But you could have given Trump anything. A gold watch, German automobile. Well, I mean, they're firing so many people at that plant. I don't even know if he could have given them that. I'm pointing out that of all the things in Germany that you could have given Trump, sausage, German sausage is fantastic. That is, I'm sorry. I'm hungry, so that's where my mind goes. You could have given him anything, but that's what you gave him. Why? The reason that he gave him that is for the exact same reason that Keir Starmer, when he was there, kept talking about the special relationship with the United States. If you remember when Donald Trump humiliated Keir Starmer, and Starmer was like, well, we have a special relationship. We have a special relationship. He kept going to this notion of the U.S., you're a former colony that effectively took over the world. We have a special relationship. And Trump turns to him and says, you can beat the Russians, right? And everybody in the room laughs at him, at Starmer. It was humiliating. But what Trump understood in that moment with him saying that is, you keep saying special relationship as if we're going to give you a backstop, that we're going to come to your assistance once again, once you start another world war. Why don't you do it on your own? Why do you need us as a backstop? If you want to fight the Russians so bad, do it on your own. Have at it. Show how powerful the British military is. A band of soccer hooligans, like Garland called them. And of course, this was humiliating because Brits have no military capacity to do that. The reason that Merz is doing that is for the exact same reason that Starmer is screaming about a special relationship. He's trying to create a tether between the United States and Europe. We have vestiges. Your grandfather is German. Hey, so the fact that your grandfather is German, the fact that we have a special relationship, shouldn't you follow through and continue to support the war effort? They are terrified that Donald Trump is going to walk. All of this stuff is trying to create a tether between Donald Trump and Europe. Whether it's Starmer talking about the special relationship between the United States and Britain, or whether it's Merz giving a birth certificate trying to show you are also connected to Europe. Your grandfather's connected to Europe. There's a part of you that is German. So, hey, why don't you help us in Europe beat back the Russians by, giving us a backstop, giving us money, supporting our sanctions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is going to create a relationship in Donald Trump's mind. All right. So what does Trump do? What does Trump do? Now, is Trump aware of that? Maybe. And the reason why I say that is he, just like with Starmer, find ways to humiliate Merz in very subversive ways. So this was one of the conversations that Merz and Trump had. Listen to what is said here, because there are a lot of liberal channels that are like, oh my God, Donald Trump is an idiot. Donald Trump doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't know that was the Nazi government. The Nazi government was running Germany as if, just like the Trump administration is running the United States. They were a government that took over. Listen to this conversation that is taking place right here.
D-Day anniversary. I'm here, Mr. President, to talk with you later on how we could contribute to that goal. And we all are looking for measures and for instruments to bring this terrible war to an end. And may I remind you that we are having June 6th tomorrow. This is D-Day anniversary, when the Americans once ended a war in Europe. And I think this is in your hand in specific, in ours.
That was not a pleasant day for you?
No, that was not a pleasant.
This was not a great
in
day.
the long run, Mr. President, this was the liberation of my country from Nazi dictatorship.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
And
Trump is trying to point out to him that when you went up against the Russians with the strongest military in Europe, you got your ass handed to you. That's what he's pointing out. And once again, you are here agitating for war to try to get the United States involved in a conflict in Europe. How did it work out for you last time? Huh? Did it go well for you when you had this war machine at your disposal? Sure, you were able to kill 20, 30 million Russians. But if you read the book Stalingrad by Beaver, and you should read Stalingrad and Berlin back to back, it is an astonishing war. It really is. 80% of the Germans that were killed on the Eastern Front. So Merz here talking about, well, D-Day in the US, 80%, I need to nail that down. 80% or more of the Germans, the Nazis, that were killed, that were eliminated on the Eastern Front. The Nazis wasn't suffering massive casualties up until the point they went against the Soviets. When they were going through Europe, they went through Europe like a hot knife through butter. France capitulated almost immediately within a few days. We're done. It's the French after all, right? Britain hauled ass off the island in order to get away. Hitler, for whatever reason, stalled because he saw a commonality between the Brits and the Germans. At the very least, that's the thought. But who knows what the real reason was. But if he had decided to destroy the British force, he would have decimated the British military as opposed to allowing the British military to get back to the UK. The point that I'm making here is Europe was a paper tiger, and they collapsed almost immediately under the German Reich, Third Reich. Initially, as the Soviet Union was learning to fight modern war, the Nazis were able to penetrate into Soviet Union through Ukraine. And they were able to take territory. They were able to kill a lot of people. The Soviet kept going back and back and back. Stalin comes out, makes that not one step back speech. If they want a war of extermination, the war of extermination they will get. And that is exactly what they had, a war of extermination. The Germans didn't consider Russians as human beings. They didn't consider Poles as human beings, Ukrainians as human beings. And they decided that they want to all of this is living space, Lebensraum. In many cases, they decided to starve populations when they didn't necessarily destroy the cities. They didn't fight the same war that they fought when they were going against the West. They fought a civil war, a civilized war of sorts, if you want to call it that. On the East, it was a war of extermination. The point that I'm making here is this idea that D-Day was the thing, that D-Day was important. Stalin had been agitating for them to intrude in a way that would divert some of the Germans, or some of the Germans away from the Eastern Front. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. Let them fight it out. We don't like either. Let them fight it out. The reality of it is 80 or more % of the Germans that were eliminated, that were decimated on the Eastern Front. And when the West realized, oh my God, the Soviet Union is about to take all of Berlin, all of a sudden then they got really involved. Oh, we got to get involved. We got to get involved. We got to get involved. Can't let the Soviets take all of Berlin. I'm saying that Merz, what he's saying here is nonsense. And all of this talk about him trying to bring the US into a third world war using Donald Trump's birth certificate is nonsense. And Donald Trump is trying to point out to him, at the very least, I think that's what Donald Trump is doing. You got your ass kicked by the Russians. Are you really trying to do it again? Let's assume for the moment that Donald Trump really doesn't want to escalate the war, that he wants to end it. He just wants to end it on American terms. Let's assume that. Meaning, regardless of the Kellogg plan, regardless of all this other nonsense, that he wants to freeze the conflict. At the very least, he acknowledges we've lost. We need to stop this. Even if this stuff sparks up later, we need to stop this now. This is not in our best interest. This is not in America's best interest. We need to stop giving money to it, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say that's true. And you have this German who's sitting in front of you, who's talking about your birth parents or your grandparents, and is trying to get you to be involved in a third world war, which is exactly what it would be, bringing this world to the brink of nuclear oblivion because they don't believe the stove is hot, just like Hitler didn't believe the stove was hot. And you're Donald Trump, and you point out to him, D-Day was not a good day for you, right? And you believe that you're going up against the Russians now with one of the strongest, if not the strongest, battle-tested military in the world, especially in land war and especially in wars of defending their homeland, that you believe that this is in your best interest, that we backstop you in a third world war. Do you know who we get hurt first? Do you understand that? Do you get that? That Berlin will get destroyed. All of those good sausages and everything else out of Berlin, gone. I would lose access to those sausages at Frankfurt Airport. That is not what I want. And yet, that is my most important thing. I'm pointing out that this is not a slip by Donald Trump. This is Trump trying to point out to him, you fucked up once, you found out. Are you really trying to do it again? Have you not learned anything? Have you not learned anything? I'm going to go to another post where Donald Trump again makes the point once again. And again, these liberals don't quite get it. And they keep thinking Donald Trump is just making mixed statements here. These are not misstatements. At least I don't. I think he's trying to make a point to Germany, just like he was trying to make a point to Starmer. Hey, you can beat the Russians, right? And just like he was trying to make a point to Macron. We're not going to be your backstop. We're not fighting a third world war for you. Why are all of you whack jobs continuously throwing yourselves into world wars and pulling us into it nonetheless? Here he is again, seemingly trying to make that very specific point. Does Merz get it?
Is Germany doing enough on defense?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't discussed it very much. I know that you're spending more money on defense now, and quite a bit more money, and that's a positive thing. I'm not sure that General MacArthur would have said it's positive, you know. He wouldn't like it, but I sort of think it's good. You understand what I mean by that?
I understand.
He made a statement, never let Germany rearm. And I said, I always think about that when he says, sir, we're spending more money on defense.
Yeah. Never let Germany rearm. Never let Germany rearm. Scratch a German, find a Nazi. And the moment that you allow them to rearm and get weapons, who the hell knows what takes place? Merz seems to be in this mindset that he wants to be the military power in Europe. That's interesting. We've done that once, right? Why are we doing that again? And what Trump knows is that if those Taurus missiles hit Russia, just like what Zelensky did to that train, or just like what Zelensky did in regards to hitting the airfield, all hell will break loose. The phone call that Trump made doesn't matter. In fact, Trump even points out that in that phone call, he was like, I tried to get Putin and stay his hand, but Putin was very strong and pointing out, we will respond. I don't care what you're saying here. I don't care. 1,000 times I don't care. We're going to respond. And Trump pointed out he was very strong about the fact that they were going to open a can of whip ass, meaning this notion of appeasement is over with. If Merz gets what he wants, Europe is going to get fed to the Russians. And the question for America is going to be, does America get involved? Meaning, if those Taurus missiles are fired and hit Moscow or hit somewhere in Russia and kills a lot of people, and Russia knows these Taurus missiles came from Germany, and Russia knows that Germans had their hands on those missiles for those missiles to be fired, Article 5 doesn't apply. Article 5 doesn't apply. It is up to the President of the United States to make a decision on whether or not he gets involved when Germany starts getting bombed and hit. It's a question. Europe will get involved, fair enough, with their 25,000 troops and with their inability to form military because the U.S. is effectively their military. But if Trump refuses to throw the U.S. into a third world war, which is what Starmer, Macron, and for that matter, Merz is effectively trying to do, because in their mind, Putin's pragmatism is weakness, and that if America is involved, Putin's pragmatism will run through, and he would back down. That is what they are thinking. That is what they believe. They believe that up to the point that it's not true, which is the exact reason why people are saying that Russia needs to be very definitive in its response. It needs to be so demonstrative and so overwhelming that all of them realize Putin is not fucking around. Because up to this point, his pragmatism has been looked at as weakness. This is the entire tenor and point of this conversation. That was the entire tenor and point of Macron and Starmer going to the U.S., trying to get the U.S. to be involved. If the U.S. gives us a blank check, if you remember, Germany gave Austria-Hungarian Empire a blank check under this belief that, hey, maybe the Russians will back down. If we get the blank check, the Russians didn't back down back then. They're not going to back down now. You're going after their state in an existential war, just like you did once before in an existential war. And the president of the U.S. is trying to impart to you over and over and over again, you did not fare well in that first war, and rearming you. Yes, I'm glad that you guys are paying more for the military budgets in Europe, but you're a problem. You're a problem. It's fascinating. There's politics going on here, and many of the liberal channels are looking at it like, oh my God, Donald Trump doesn't know about the Nazis. No, he knows. He knows. The fact that he knew about MacArthur, and MacArthur was like, never let him rearm. He doesn't have a mic in his ear. He's saying that off the cuff, off the top of his head, meaning he at the very least knows something basic about this, and he knows something basic that they're trying to put it on him to fight a world war, which that's a hell of a bag to hold if you're a U.S. president. Joe Biden might have been incompetent enough to do it. Kamala Harris might have been incompetent enough to do it. But Trump, at the very least, seems unwilling to embroil the United States into a nuclear holocaust. He wants to go fight China, or at the very least, go pressure China. Getting involved in a war with a military that has been battle tested, that has been killing and dying for the last 3 years, is not something that he wants to do. You will be putting the United States military up against a peer competitor in a war that it hasn't fought in, oh my God, for God knows how long. And if you don't have the stomach to deal with the losses that you might have taken from Yemen, is this really what you are looking for? Which is the point. It's why he keeps putting a knife in Starmer, he keeps putting a knife in Macron, and he keeps putting a knife in Merz. They have no respect for the European leaders. There's nothing but contempt. And he understands that they want him to hold the bag for something that he doesn't want to hold the bag for. And yet they keep trying. I don't even know why he meets these people. They're weak, ineffective as leaders, and they have no military to speak about that has no military power. Europe is nothing. Why are you continuously meeting these people? But he does, over and over and over again, if only to make the point. No. And to put a knife in them at the same time with that no, with these kind of biting commentaries that happens with leader after leader after leader. All of them are U.S. vassals. None of them have the capacity to fight the Russians on their own. If they did, they would. but they're not. They're begging the US to get involved. Fascinating, right? Deep politics. All of these people have their objectives. And for all of this talk about Donald Trump not knowing any of this stuff, at the very least, he seems to have a sense about what they're doing and is responding to his sense of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to pull the United States into. It's fascinating. It really is. Merz is going to go home empty-handed. Zelensky has run out of money. The weapons that are that have been given to Zelensky through Joe Biden has run its course. I think by the end of the year, it's run its course. It's going to take $20 billion, if I'm not mistaken, something to that effect, for Zelensky to effectively buy more weapons. We will see if Europe will give him the money to buy those weapons in order to maintain the war for this year. For 2025, it's going to be another $40 to $60 billion. Considering that they're in default now, as we speak, will they have the money to keep this going? Second question, will Donald Trump push through another contract for them to get more money through U.S. Congress? Or does Trump say, this is it, I'm out, we're done? There are questions to be answered. But my guest is